And welcome to Let 'Em Talk. I'm Paul DiRienzo, and my guests are Oja and Vanissa, and they're going to talk. We're going to be talking. Vanissa's been on before. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Okay, and and Oja is and I work together at the Yippee Cafe on the board of directors there. Well, you guys are like sort of guerrilla journalists, right? You're talking about guerrilla journalism before, and we're going to be talking about what that means in this day and age. How journalism can actually be a weapon in the hands of the people to fight for justice and for good things. So we are live. So you can call us, and our number is there on the screen, 212-757-1538. And looking forward to folks calling and joining in on the show. I don't know how to encourage folks as much as possible, but, this is your airwaves as well, or cable waves, and this is an opportunity to join in. Remember, there is a delay, so wait a few seconds and turn your TV down if you do call. So, again, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Paul.
And glad to have you on. And behind us is a picture. Describe that picture behind us.
Sure. This was taken at last week's Ramarley Graham Vigil. There's a Jamaican artist named Rally Bop who was doing a music video. The song is called "I Wish," and it's in dedication to Ramarley Graham, who was a young 18-year-old who lost his life to police violence this past February.
Well, that's an interesting story, too, because folks who might not have heard about the Ramarley Graham case, and I don't think there's too many in New York who have not heard about it, but for those who might not have heard about it, because this, by the way, this program is picked up and watched by people all over the world. So there's folks in the Philippines and different places watching us right now. So maybe explain for folks who Ramarley Graham was, what happened to him.
Sure. He was an 18-year-old Jamaican male from the Bronx. He was just, your average teenage kid. He was walking home after having hung out with a couple of friends, and he walked into his house. Luckily, the family had a surveillance camera right outside the house, and it showed after he walked in, a few moments later, a couple of NYPD officers running in and breaking the door down.
Right,
and
we've seen that video. That video is on YouTube, and many thousands of people have downloaded and watched it. And in fact, it does show Ramarley quite calmly walking into his house like he was coming home, and then moments later, two police officers forcing their way in. What was going on there, and what happened next?
So he had gone upstairs to the bathroom, and the police had run up, and they found him in the bathroom, and they shot and killed him right in front of his 6-year-old brother, who's actually right behind
That's who's on
the little guy, holding up the candle so
right
bravely.
Behind you, Vanissa,
yes.
Move over a little bit to your right, and maybe folks can see to your left. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Right, and there's Ramarley's brother right behind us.
Yes.
Right there on your side over there, right there. There he is. All right.
And
okay.
Yeah, so he witnessed it, and so did a couple of other kids were also in the building. And also Ramarley's grandmother. So the family's been holding these vigils outside their house for the last several weeks, and they're holding them every Thursday from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Where is their home? Where are they?
The address is 749 East 229th Street in the Bronx.
Right.
And you take the 2 train to 225th in White Plains.
Okay, so the 2 train to 225th, way up there in the North Bronx.
That's right.
Okay, and so I see the address 749 East 229th Street, and you take the 2 train to 225th Street, and it's obviously 4 blocks away.
Right, it's only a few blocks away, and it's from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. What we usually do is we march to the 47th precinct, and the family's been really, really organized, and they have they're getting a lot of folks supporting them, and we just need to.
What are they demanding? What is the family demanding at this time?
Right now, they're demanding the indictment of Officer Richard Hasty, who is the officer who shot and killed Ramarley.
His indictment for murder or some related crime.
Yes.
And that's not coming. Is there any promise or any hope of that happening through official channels? I mean, what have they said? Do you know?
They haven't. I don't think at this point they've given an answer. They just keep telling them to wait.
It's been a long time. It's been months now. So obviously, it doesn't seem like it's going to be coming without any pressure anyway. Is there any federal investigation or any civil rights type investigation?
As far as I know, not yet. I mean,
it's just amazing to me. Why? I mean, how has the police, to your best of your knowledge, has the city made any statements as far as claiming that this was somehow justified?
I know that the police at some point, I think they changed their story a couple of times, especially when they didn't realize that the surveillance camera was there. They didn't realize. So at first they said that Ramarley was evading arrest, that he was running away from the police, which, the tape shows that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
And
some parallels with Trayvon Martin there.
Yes.
Some parallels, not the same, but some parallels.
Also, I mean, it's also a lot of parallels with Emmett Till. You know what I mean, or any other
Emmett Till,
any other lynching or
right.
assassination of any person on
For
racial
folks who don't know,
basis,
because the Emmett Till comparison has been brought up a lot, and many people there are people who were born after that period who might not know it, or they haven't studied their civil rights history. That Emmett Till was a young African-American boy, even this teenager, who was down from, I think, Philadelphia. He was Pennsylvania. He was visiting relatives in Mississippi. And the claim was he whistled at a white woman when he was running to the store to pick up some groceries, and was murdered.
Yeah, and it's really the real parallel there is that you can take any situation and call it an excuse for whatever kind of action that they're claiming to be lawful.
Absolutely.
So in this case, supposedly, according to the police, Ramarley had a small amount of marijuana on him or something.
And which
whatever
never
the
found.
excuse.
Never found.
Yeah, never found. Probably fabricated. When you have a young boy in shock in the house and a grandmother and elder in shock, how are we supposed to know? We're lucky that they were even there. Otherwise, they could have planted something else on Ramarley Graham. But the point is that it's happening in every neighborhood. And it's not really going to change until people come out in strength, So we're asking all the New Yorkers that are watching in New York, or all the people around the country who may be watching around the world, to go out and support families who have been victims of this type of violence, systematic violence against the youth in America. It's an epidemic, really a pandemic.
The New York
we're
Times,
really feeling
surprisingly, yesterday came out with an editorial where they're claiming that there should be a civil rights investigation to the stop and frisk policies in New York. What's it like to be a young person in New York City these days? I mean, I can't say I have not been stopped and frisked yet, but there's only a 1 in 11 chance of a white person being stopped and frisked, and of a white person of my age being stopped and frisked is probably a 1 in 100 chance of that.
Right.
So somebody's being stopped and frisked.
Right.
The young people of New York, of black and Latino people, I think 53% of the stop and frisks are African American alone.
Serious. So in order to stop this type of behavior, it really is going to take a mobilization of the public. So that's why, we're asking people to come out to 229th Street in White Plains, take the 2 train up to 225th, walk those 4 blocks from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. every Thursday. It's going on for 18 Thursdays, so it's going on until July 19th.
What happens on July 19th? Just to pick a date, or is
it's 18 Thursdays, because Ramarley was 18 years old.
I see.
And the family came out to an event that we did a photo exhibit at, and was able to speak to the people directly. This is something that's becoming more and more common.
Well, tell me more, because we were talking about guerrilla journalism. What do you mean by guerrilla reporting, guerrilla journalism? What's that all about?
Well, it's basically, when you talk about guerrilla warfare, it's the warrior being the vanguard of the people. So guerrilla media is basically just, media makers who are really the vanguard of the people, meaning that we're taking it into our own hands to supply direct source media to the rest of our community, so that the establishment isn't in charge of telling our story, or omitting it altogether.
So is that using, we have, Flickr or YouTube, all those kind of things?
Using whatever is accessible, and we're lucky because today there's a lot accessible.
Right.
iPhone cameras, video cameras, all of its high megapixel, high resolution stuff.
Amazing, the Trayvon case, the fact that he was on the cell phone with his girlfriend, and that wasn't even known until after one of these situations where allegations are made, stories are told, and then facts come out.
And a perfect example there of what you should do in a situation like that. If you're on the cell phone, don't hang up the cell phone. Let the person on the cell phone know that you're being approached by the police, and keep the cell phone on. Allow it to stay on with the person on the other end, even though it may seem like it's off.
Right.
As a
Those
precaution.
phone calls,
there's a lot of There's a lot of things to do in
are
those situations.
registered.
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely.
They're registered, man. People know.
Definitely.
They can tell where that phone call was made,
That's right.
what time it was made. They might not have everything that was said, but then the person on the other side can testify
That's
to what
right.
they heard. So
That's right.
you have a witness, which is the whole thing with the Trayvon case is they tried to move as if there was no witnesses
Right.
to anything that happened, and then
Right.
boom, there was a witness.
Right.
They didn't know.
And there's a larger thing happening too. I mean, aside from the obvious racism in these situations, there's kind of this amplification of racism in the mass media, where if you didn't look into the news at first, you wouldn't have known that Zimmerman was actually a Latino. You would have just thought that he was some like straight white man killing a straight black youth. So there's this emphasis on this American obsession of race, which is real.
Yeah.
But the fact is that police of all color have
Part of
been
the
gunning
obsession
down
for
our young
race is
people.
to not speak about
Right.
it when it's obvious.
Right.
Part of
And
the
then-
obsession is to make believe
Right.
race. I'm not race. What? You're
Right.
black? I
Yeah.
didn't even consider that.
And they're really
Right.
detracting.
Yeah.
They're detracting from the fact of police being working class people. Police being workers,
Sure.
and then gunning down other workers and children of workers. Like last time Vanissa was here, she was showing the Nicholas Hayward Jr. story.
Sure.
So you're looking at a black cop gunning down a young kid.
Right.
Black cop in uniform. So once you're joining up with that team, that's something that really needs to be looked at. The
Yeah.
amount of police officers who were shot off duty
Right.
as black and Latino people in the society by other cops that are on duty is
Right.
staggering.
I'm trying to get Joanne Naughton, who works with law enforcement against prohibition, and she was actually a New York City detective, and also the person who did a lot of buys and buy and bust. When she was a young woman, they sent her to make the buys, and then they would arrest the people afterwards. And so she rose through the ranks, became a sergeant and a detective, and now she's a leader of law enforcement against prohibition. And she said that everything I did in my whole life was just a oppressive waste of time and money. I mean, it was, why were we going after young people who were just trying to sell a little bit of dope in order to pay for their own habits, calling them kingpins, and creating this myth in people's minds that there's these kingpins out there, when actually it's just an excuse to shake down young kids.
Right, of course. And then, I mean, that's leaving out the whole fact that it was the NYPD that proliferated the drugs and the guns to begin with. We saw that with the Larry Davis case. It came right out. You saw the fact that
all right,
crack,
Larry Davis,
crack
interesting.
came into the community from the Oliver North,
Right.
trials.
Right. I asked. He kept.
So
he wouldn't answer that question when I asked him about it. I did ask him once about
The
that. He was just
information's
looking at
out
me.
there. I mean, it's
I
all.
know. Right. No, there is. There was plenty of evidence of it.
Yeah.
I was one of the people who broke that story and was involved in breaking that story back in the day. That was
That's
what I
right.
worked on. That was my guerrilla journalism.
That's right.
And I wasn't. There's some people I knew in Arkansas who actually hid in the bushes outside a government airport and took photographs. And some of those people in Arkansas were pretty.
That's dangerous business.
They were into it,
Wow.
boy. They were into exposing what was going on out there.
But I mean,
And-
the relevance of that
Yeah,
to what we're dealing with today is directly connected.
yeah, absolutely.
Because they run these drugs in.
It's the same story, really.
Yeah,
just a
and
few
they
years
bust
down the
people
line.
down.
you
But
know.
except now it's just indiscriminate killing of anybody
Right.
on the street.
Let's go back because you
know?
mentioned before Oliver North, we were talking about
Larry Davis.
and I've had Lynn Stewart before she went to jail.
Free Lynn Stewart, by the way.
Free Lynn Stewart.
Yeah.
She was on this show several times. Good friend of mine. Her husband, Ralph Pointer, was just here a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about this case. We've talked about quite in detail on this show, Larry Davis, and Bill Kunstler had the case earlier.
Yeah.
than that. And in the Larry Davis case, Larry Davis was, it was the headlines. Drug kingpin shoots 6 police officers, right? And then you got this impression this madman went wild and killed 6 and shot. He didn't kill them, but shot and wounded 6 police officers. It turned out that he claimed that he was just defending himself, that
Right.
these officers had been using him in drug trafficking, and that when the deal went sour, he was literally fighting for his life, and did successfully escaped. Was later arrested, was found not guilty.
That's right.
Not found not guilty.
Because they
Lynn-
looked at
right.
the forensic evidence.
Why is Lynn Stewart in jail? Is she in jail
That's
because she passed on a press release from the old sheikh,
Or,
or revenge because she got Larry Davis off?
That's
it's a
right.
good question. I mean, we can also look at Serpico. You know, a Hollywood movie that's made
A real
about
guy,
a
though.
real case.
Yeah.
A real case, real
The
guy.
guy's still alive.
Who's now
still
he's still
advocating.
Oh yeah, he
Yeah.
speaks out. Yeah,
You
he
know,
had to
but-
leave the United States. He lives
Yeah,
in
he-
another country.
No, he's
No,
back
now
now.
he's back.
He's
Yeah.
back here in America. Okay.
But I mean, we're just saying this stuff to kind of let the viewers know, you know, that this information is out there, and every story you hear about, whether it be NYPD or guys down in Arizona, is connected to a history of abuse at the hands of the NYPD and different PD around the country. I mean, out in Long Island, we in Suffolk County, we build with the Kenny Lazo
Oh,
Coalition.
yeah, great.
Justice
great.
for Kenny.
Yes, Right.
I mean, a lot of people don't know about those cases out
We've
there.
had folks on here, and we've
That's
talked.
right.
We cover this very closely, and I'm glad to have you guys on and talk about
Likewise.
the journalistic aspect. Now, you talk about history, and it's interesting because a couple months back, after attending an Occupy Wall Street protest at Mayor Bloomberg's home, I jumped on the bus, went across town to it was a Friday, which is the free day, or what pay what you will day, at the New York Historical Society. It's an
Right.
incredible new museum. Well, it's an old museum, but it's been rebuilt, and it's really a new museum now, but it's got a lot of stuff about the history of New York, and they were doing a special presentation on the Haitian Revolution, the French Revolution, the American Revolution, the links between the three.
That's right.
And you guys had mentioned it, so I said, "Oh, I'm up here. I'm going to go over there." I walked in, and who should I see walking through the exhibit but you guys, right?
That's right.
Right? And that was
Free day.
an amazing exhibit. I mentioned that to friends of mine. I work with a teacher from Haiti, and I said, I'm trying to get him to go to this thing. And he said, "Oh, I'm going to go now." There's a lot of people didn't know the
Is it
close.
still there now?
I think it might be over by now.
Yeah,
I mean,
probably.
yeah,
That was
but
a great exhibit.
It was
But
a great
I will
exhibit,
check back
yeah.
for that. I mean, that was
Yeah.
incredible. Took a lot of good notes.
Gotta check
Yeah.
that library too.
Right, and they have the reality. I mean, they had the original Stamp Act.
Right.
If you know about American history, the American Revolution was sparked by the Stamp Act, which is a law, a tax basically from England that said you had to tax everything, including tea bag,
Right.
right? We know where the
Right.
tea bag comes from, the Tea Party, right?
Right.
And they actually had the law from England, shipped over here from England, and it was in a roll. They used to write their laws on rolls. I didn't know that, like a mile-long roll. They wrote their law on. So that was interesting, the original that, but also to see it was true that the slaves in Haiti did rise up. They did,
Yeah.
and they tried to negotiate settlement, and they were cheated.
Yeah, there was.
And then
I
they
mean,
said,
there's,
"Okay, we're not going to take the beat cheating anymore. Now we're going to burn down all your plantations."
there's still. There's still a gross simplification of the history and kind of like commodification of the history in a way. Because although that exhibit was good, we're still looking at the fact that even calling Haiti over and over again a slave revolution. These are people who were enslaved. But aside from that, people who stood up against the injustices of being enslaved, a large portion of the people fighting, and actually the most responsible group for the success of the Haitian Revolution, were so-called Maroons. People, many of which had been born into freedom, many of which who were in societies that were free for hundreds of years at that point. So this whole thing is still kind of omitting that whole discussion, and then this bringing it, almost making these positive, negative statements all the time. We see the same exact thing happening with the history that's happened day to day with us. That's why it's so important to pick up that camera, to have that recorder, to go to the actions yourself, to document this stuff, to get it up online, to have the dialogue,
Well,
because
now
otherwise we're lost.
everybody
we lose
has
the,
a
we lose the
camera.
story.
Everybody who has a cell phone in America today has a camera.
That's
There's
right.
very few cell phones that don't come with cameras now, and you can send the pictures and the movies you take over your own cell phone to internet sites where they will be posted, and you can it's YouTube, Flickr, Facebook. There's many, and I'm not going to say any one of them. There's many others. Tumblr, Stumble Upon. There's so many out there, and they'll assign you for free a phone number, address that you can use to send your pictures and post them on the internet as soon as you take them. Everybody, I believe, in America, in the world, who has a cell phone is a citizen journalist.
That's right.
That's right.
You are empowered as a citizen journalist. You take out that cell phone, snap a picture, dial in that number, and post it on the internet, and believe me, you'll be surprised. Nobody knows who you are. You get 1,000 hits in one day on your cell.
And I mean, yeah, but
how do they find out?
That's the thing too, that it's kind of misdirected in a way. So what we're trying to do is basically build with other community members and focus the flow of the dialogue.
Right, in a
Because
way,
if you have this
curate.
over saturation of media, it's not helping anybody anyway. But if we're looking at specific topics, specific subjects, and then people are chiming in on those subjects, Now we have a discussion. We have something that action can take place behind backups
Tell
and
give
campaigns.
people advice. How should they handle it if they see a Ramarley situation and they have their cell phone? How should they handle that?
Oh, they should definitely, make sure first that there's someone around. We work with an organization called Cop Watch.
Cop Watch.
Right, and they give you certain guidelines.
Okay. What are some of those guidelines?
Well,
You know,
basically, the basic idea from what I know, and I'm no expert. I mean, you
Oh,
have
sure
to
you
talk
are.
to some
Oh, you're an
Cop
expert.
Watch people.
Yeah. Don't worry, you're an expert.
But I mean, the basic premise is that when you're approaching a police officer, act as if you're being approached by a wild animal. Right, so hands are in full sight, everything, make sure that you're protected.
Small movement.
So before you even pull out the camera, I would say, if something like that is going down, make sure someone's with you who can kind of watch you while you're doing it, and so nobody's going to.
You're saying it's sort of like those situations which I've been in, where you whistling down the street and you whip around the corner and there's a pit bull screaming, barking at you on the end of a chain 2 inches from you, and you're, oh my God, put your dog away.
Exactly.
Right? That's the type of situation you're
At
in.
this point, I mean, it's not like people are that afraid of violent criminals. It's you're just as likely to be shot by some insane police officer.
Right.
Or beaten to death.
Is it insane, or is there a method to this madness? Because obviously it's a pattern. I mean, if the New York Times is calling on the government to get involved, the federal government to look into what's happening here.
Right.
I mean, this is how crime has been put under control in New York at the expense of people's rights and lives of hundreds of people, of innocent people who had nothing to do with anything, to send messages. Texting messages.
I don't think, I would agree, I would agree on the whole argument with the death penalty, that there's no kind of deterrent in that. There's no deterrent in that. I mean, the police are shooting people up. You think that people that are doing crime are stopping doing crime because the police are shooting people up. It's not really what's happening. What's happening is they're just blanket arresting, blanket raiding, blanketing abusing, and they happen to get maybe some of the people who are involved in crime, but the other half or more, whoever they're
90%.
Killing, 90% of the stop and frisk.
89% of the stop and frisks there's nothing.
Yeah.
And of the 11%, the vast majority of those is marijuana, a small amount of marijuana in the person's wallet that falls out of their wallet, which has all the marijuana people like on the side of the stop and frisk people.
And what's the percentage of people becoming victims due to stop and frisk? Because in the process of being stopped and frisked, getting beaten,
altercations,
right?
Well,
getting beaten,
the internet's full of those.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, there's another statistic there, with a very deadly result, right? Which Ramarley Graham is a victim. Kenny Lazo was pulled over, for speed going 65 in 55 mile per hour lane, and then all of a sudden he's dead, right? And
beaten to death.
And one of the projects that we do as ACD Media is it comes from the Stolen Lives Project, which is
Stolen Lives with Nicholas Hayward Jr.'s involvement.
Spearheaded by the late Monica Shea, right, Catherine Lee. And the Force Trajectory Project is kind of like almost a continuation of that, kind of trying to bring people to the content through images, through sound interviews, through new media, to reintroduce the topic of stolen lives in a way that can be digestible to the public, right?
Sure.
Like, this is a nationwide epidemic. It's been happening since the birth of this country. We need to answer this question about race.
And just to be clear, the Stolen Lives is a project that's a 2-book compendium of all the cases since 2000.
Yeah,
Who have, deaths.
90s.
Where can
90s by
folks
the
get more information?
StolenLives.org.
Yeah, Vanissa Chan and Osha are here, and we've been talking about guerrilla journalism. We've been talking about the abuse behind stop and frisk and the Ramarley Graham case, and we have a photograph behind us from the Ramarley, the weekly vigils that happen at the home of Ramarley Graham's family. And so how can people hook up with you guys, contact with you, and learn more about this?
You can check out our blog.
acdmedia.wordpress.com.
acdmedia.wordpress.com.
Right, and
that's key, is ACD Media.
That's
You
right.
just search for that, it comes right up.
That's right. I really also want to stress that, getting involved is, getting involved is the most important thing, like physically involved. Like, we want people to be at those vigils every week. And maybe you're busy this week, but next Thursday, 5 p.m., be in the Bronx.
Day after tomorrow. It's going to be a
That's right.
beautiful day. Okay,
Right,
finally
that's
the rain's
right.
going to be over. It's it's 749 East 229th Street in the Bronx. You take the 2 train to 225th and walk 4 blocks. It's right there. And I'll be there. You
Right.
should be there.
And we
I
really want people to hear the story directly from the family at
Right.
some point.
Absolutely.
That's the work we do. So it's
Right.
it's not just about talking about this stuff. It's when I say dialogue, I mean getting on the site, checking out some of the stuff, leaving a message. We'll get back to you. Come out, be there, because it's not only about this symbolic thing of solidarity for being there for a family or another family. A lot of times it's real practical things. Some of these family members, they're in and out of court all the time. They're not getting sleep. People don't have counselors or don't have
They
counseling
could use some
enough.
help.
They could use some help with
They need support.
groceries,
You guys
whatever.
to
They
come
just
out
need
there and
support.
help folks.
It's community.
Yeah.
If it happened to you tomorrow,
Absolutely.
right.
you would want people to be there.
We've had
for you.
guests on this show, amazing. The people who've been on, Barbara Jackson and others. Up in the Bronx, and I wish people heard us in the Bronx, so you can get us on YouTube when I post this show. But folks in the Bronx have been dealing with this for a long time,
That's
and
right.
there's lots of people who have been activated by these kind of events happening
right.
there.
I also want to put out there, I didn't want to talk too much about Ramarley's case because hopefully the family members will be coming on the show,
That's
hopefully.
great. Okay.
They have a website, it's ramarleyscall.org.
Ramarleyscall.org.
All the details,
Right.
any updates or whatever, you should check for that, on that website
Yeah.
for Ramarley's case. Also, I wanted to shout out Danette Chavis, mother of Greg Chavis, who was killed in, I think, '04. She put together a petition, a nationwide action against police brutality, and that can be found on change.org as a
Okay.
petition. So
We'll soon have a link on our site.
All right,
Yeah.
great.
As well as some
that's
footage.
The Association of Conscious Documentarians, ACD.
Alliance of
Yeah.
Conscious
Alliance. I'm sorry,
Association.
Alliance. What did I say? I'm sorry.
Association.
Alliance. An alliance. Of
It's
conscious
very similar.
documentarians.
Very similar.
All right, guys, we have about 20 seconds. What do you want to leave with?
June 5th at Brooklyn Downtown Court. Which court is that? June 5th is the date for Brianna Ojeda's next.
Okay.
Next
And we had
case, next,
Brianna's dad
hearing.
here on this show.
That's
so thank
right,
you, and
Michael
we'll see
Ojeda.
you there too.
Check the
All right.
website, ACD Media.